Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Bible study through each chapter of the Bible in 5 minutes. This is day number 5, episode number 5. We're in Genesis chapter 5. And if you want all the information that I'm reading off of and that you're going to hear in this video, we have handouts available on our website at tobelikechrist.com. There's a link down in the description. So let's talk about this. Genesis chapter 5. This is definitely kind of a unique chapter and probably one that gets skipped over a lot of times. But before we discuss the reasons for that, let's talk about our questions. Who, what, when, where, and why. Let's start with the when. When did the events of this chapter take place? Well, this chapter is unique in the sense that it covers a massive amount of history, about 1,650 years. This covers all of the descendants of Adam and Eve through their son Seth, who lived from the creation of the world to the global flood of Noah's day that we're going to talk about in the next couple chapters. This period of history is sometimes known by the fancy term the antediluvian period, which just means pre-flood. In terms of our characters, I'm just going to mention a few because we're going to have a huge list of names that we go over in our outline. Just a few of the main ones. Of course, there's Adam and Eve, the first man and woman who God created and put in the Garden of Eden. And then a famous name in this chapter is Methuselah. He's famous for having the longest recorded human life. He was 969 years old when he died. And then the last one I'll mention here is Noah. Noah is the main character of Genesis chapter 6 through 10. At God's instructions, his family built an ark of wood to save themselves and the animals from a global flood. Now let's talk about the where. Where did these events take place? Well, Genesis 5 is a genealogy that records the descendants of Adam and Eve. The author doesn't give us a whole lot of specifics about where they lived or where they went, where they traveled, because that's not the intent of the chapter, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. Now let's go over our outline. This one's definitely going to be a bit unique, but we'll go over it anyway. Let's talk about the purpose of Genesis 5, because if you've looked at the chapter, and hopefully you read it before you came to this study, it's just a big old list of names, right? Genesis 5 is a genealogy. A genealogy is, quote, an account of the descent of a person, family, or group from an ancestor. That's according to Webster's dictionary. This particular genealogy traces Adam and Eve's descendants, but specifically through their son Seth. It's not a record of Cain's descendants. And so now let's talk about this family tree and verses 1 through 32. This makes up the whole chapter. I'll try to make this as interesting as I can, but it might be more value to actually go and print the handout offline so you can read these numbers for yourselves and these names and put them together in your head. But for the sake of doing all these studies the same, let's tackle this. The first name on the genealogy is Adam, and he fathered Seth when he was 130 years old. Adam died when he was 930 years old. Seth fathered Enosh when he was 105, and he died when he was 912. Enosh fathered Kenan when he was 90 years old, and he died when he was 905 years old. Kenan fathered Mahalalel when he was 70. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. I need to zoom in. Kenan fathered Mahalalel when he was 70 years old, and he died at 910. Mahalalel fathered Jared when he was 65, and he died at 895. Jared fathered Enoch when he was 162, and he died when he was 962. He was an old guy. Enoch fathered Methuselah when he was 65, and Enoch's kind of interesting because the text tells us that Enoch didn't die a natural death. When he was 365 years old, the text just says that the Lord took him. Apparently, he just took him to heaven. Now, Methuselah, that's our super old guy, he fathered Lamech when he was 187, and he didn't die until he was 969. And then Lamech fathers Noah at 182. He dies at 777. Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth at 500 years old, and we won't talk about the death of Noah until later. And so that is chapter 5. Really exciting, I know. But let's now talk about an application, and this will help to explain why this information is important. So you may read this list of names and think that it doesn't have any value for a modern reader, but there's a reason that God put this into the Bible. Throughout the Bible, God made several promises pertaining to specific families and their future children, or their descendants. And having a record of the ancient family lines allows us to see how God keeps his promises across the generations. These genealogies are records of fathers and sons, yes. But really more than that, they're records of God's faithfulness and how he has worked in all of these people to fulfill the promises that he made sometimes centuries before. So these are evidences to us in the modern day that God is trustworthy and that he never breaks his promises.